Good day, everyone. My name is Andre Allen, and today I'll be presenting my independent project titled Addressing Social Injustice Through Art. This work was completed as a part of my course, Contemporary Issues in Art Education. In this presentation, I'll be exploring how art can be used not just for expression, but as a powerful tool to challenge injustice, specifically focusing on violence against women and girls. I'll also connect this issue to teaching practices and show how art classroom can become spaces for awareness, dialogue, and even activism. So let me briefly walk you through what I'll be covering. So, first, I'll introduce myself and explain how I came to this topic. Then, I'll describe my artwork and the ideas behind it. After that, I'll define social injustice and give a short overview of the issue I focus on. I'll also discuss key research and scholarly articles that helped shape my thinking along with contemporary artists whose work connects to this issue. Toward the end, I'll raise some unanswered questions that are important for us as educators. And finally, I'll share a link to my presentation and references. So, a little about me. I am Andre Alling and I have over 5 years of experience as a primary school educator, as well as being a practicing visual artist. This project really came from a question I've been thinking about. How can classrooms address issues like inequality and activisms in meaningful ways? I strongly believe that art is more than just creating images, it is a form of expression, but also a form of resistance. As educators, we have the opportunity to guide students in having meaningful and respectful discussion about real world issues through art. This idea really shaped the direction of my project. My project focuses on advocating for the rights of women and girls, particularly highlighting the injustices they face. The artwork I created is a mixed media piece that combines digital collage with hand drawn and painted elements. I approach it almost like a campaign poster, something that raises awareness and encourages people to think critically. It is a form of visual activism where the goal is not just to create something aesthetically pleasing, but something that communicates a message. In the classroom, this kind of work can guide students to engage with serious topics like violence against women and children in a thoughtful and creative way. This slide shows the artwork I created for the project. Again, the focus is on advocating for women and girls who experience injustice. When creating this piece, I wanted to balance emotional impact with clarity of message. Now, the imagery is meant to make viewers pause and reflect while also encouraging conversation. Now, as educators, this is something we can bring into our classrooms, using art not just to create, but to communicate and question what's happening in society. Now, let's look at the issue itself, violence against women and girls. This is a major form of social injustice rooted in systemic inequality and gender based violence. It is not just individual incidents, it's connected to larger structures like patriarchy and power imbalances. Some of the key issues include abuse, harassment, and assault, as well as how women are often objectified in the media. There are also economic inequalities and barriers that prevent many women from accessing justice. In my research, I also looked at how art can be used for advocacy, referencing artists like Barbara Kruger, who uses bold visuals and text to challenge power structures. The main takeaway in this is an ongoing issue, and addressing it requires both education and action. There are a few important points from my research that I want to highlight. First, the increase in reported cases of violence doesn't necessarily mean more violence is happening. It may also mean that more people feel safe enough to report it. Historically, many cases were hidden. Second, domestic violence is deeply systemic. It reflects long standing cultural norms, power imbalances, and in some cases, acceptance of abusive behavior. Third, the impact goes beyond just individuals, it affects families, children, and entire communities, often creating cycles of violence. And finally, while trust in law enforcement may be improving, reporting a case doesn't always guarantee justice or protection, which is still a major concern. I also explore contemporary artists whose work connects to this issue. Louis Bourgeois is known for exploring themes of drama, sexuality, and emotional struggles, often tied to her own experiences and broader societal oppression. S.A. Bachman focuses more directly on activism, especially around violence against women and systemic injustice. Her work often combines art with public protest and intervention. These artists show how art can move beyond galleries and become part of social action. Another important artist is Susan Lacey, who creates large scale projects and address issues like rape, domestic violence, and gender inequality. Her work often involves communities and public participation. Shawnee Rees James, on the other hand, paints intense domestic scenes that show women in restrictive and sometimes oppressive roles. Her work challenges traditional ideas of femininity and domestic life. All of these artists demonstrate different ways art can highlight injustice and spark conversation. One of the key articles I used was by Morris in 2022, which focused on domestic violence in Jamaica. The article reported that cases nearly doubled over 5 years, from just over 4,000 to about 8,000 annually. This increase may reflect greater confidence in reporting, but it also suggests that the issue is more widespread than previously understood. The findings were discussed at a regional workshop on gender based violence, showing that this is not just a local issue, but part of a larger regional concern. Another important source was Garcia and Mira's work on Youth Participatory Action Research, or YPAR. This approach combines research, art, and activism, positioning students as active participants rather than passive learners. It encourages students to question inequality and power structure while using creative methods like visual art or media to express their ideas. What I found most powerful is that it shows how art education can build engagement, identity, and civic participation. In simple terms, students use art not just to learn, but to understand and challenge the world around them. Even with all this research, there are still important questions to consider. For example, how effective is art in creating real change? What happens after awareness is raised? Why do many survivors still remain silent, even when there is more awareness now? And as educators, we have to ask ourselves, how can art education more actively address issues like violence against women and girls? These are ongoing questions that don't have simple answers, but they are important for shaping how we teach. Finally, these are the references that informed my work, including the articles by Maris and Garcia and Myra. These sources help me connect theory, research, and practice in a meaningful way. So, to wrap up, this project really reinforced my belief that art education has a potential to go beyond creativity. It can be a space for awareness, critical thinking, and social change. As educators, we have a responsibility to create opportunities for students to engage with real issues, and art gives us a powerful way to do that. Thank you for listening.